fans of a Rock N Roll Zelig podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Holly Cork, with my other co-hosts here, Del Breckenfeld, and then our newer co-host who's been on the last few with us. I think she's sticking around. My sister, Shanna Breckenfeld. So
hello.
It's a family affair, this podcast, and we have a lot of fun. So we so appreciate everyone who's joining us, whether you're listening on Spotify or watching the video on YouTube. We know it's been a little bit since we put out a video, life and stuff, but
Europe.
Europe, right? Shanna was in Europe. Dad's been kind of going all over the place. So we, we want to do these more regularly. I know I say that a lot, because we just keep getting really good feedback from everyone and people enjoy listening to it and we're having fun with it. So we're just going to keep going. So thank you so much to everyone who's on. And yeah, I think we're just going to jump in here. So really quick, I just want to acknowledge that I always dress like this, but like I amped it up more today because this is technically like our Halloween episode. Look at Shanna, you got a nice little spooky background there.
Definitely got it. Yeah.
Yeah. We're all in black, of course, because that's our family. But Halloween is obviously my favorite time of year, my favorite holiday, and fall, although it snowed today in Denver, like a lot.
Yeah.
Wasn't prepared for that.
Nope.
I mean, it was, but not really. Usually in Chicago,
not mentally prepared for it.
Yeah. Usually in Chicago, it's like after Halloween, but this time. But I used to live in Denver, my husband and I, so we know how it goes. We know in a day or two it's all going to be gone and beautiful again. So I'm okay with
it. And it was only 90 here today in the desert. So not bragging because it was 108 2 weeks ago.
I missed that.
From Denver, seeing you guys to 50 degrees hotter. By the way, you guys, it's so true that you guys are always in the Halloween spirit and you always have that look. A friend of mine is a board game designer. And that's very big now among millennials, and a lot of people. They're going back to the board games. It's not Monopoly. It's games. They'll play it, but it's games that appeal to them. Well, his new game, I don't have the name of it yet, but he waved me down today. I was walking. And he goes, "You got to come in. I got my new game. He got all the pieces laid out. It's all skulls and all this stuff." And I go, "You know what?" I said, "As soon as that game is published, I got first dibs on it because I go, my family will love that." And he goes, "Oh yeah, well, it's Halloween." I go, "No, my family will love it year round, including my granddaughter."
Year round.
As long as there's little skull tokens, they're in.
I want it. That sounds so cool. I do have what's that super goth game I have, Shan? Like something what is it called? Gothic. Oh, Andy's making an appearance. Gothic. Yeah, it's literally called Gothic. So yeah,
Holly, when you were young and I said my daughter's goth, you would go, "Dude, I'm not goth."
I'm metal. It's different. There's a difference. Where's my goth and metal people out there? I'm goth-ish, I guess. But definitely more
goth adjacent.
Yeah, goth adjacent.
Shanna, you skipped the goth thing, okay? But right now you're in the genre. You're in the.
I don't know. I got Shanna just a quick little drop. So one of my favorite bands ever, Katatonia from Sweden. I got Shanna into them. She's gonna come see it. You've seen them with us before, right? You've gone to our show before.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Metal. They're like,
yeah, it's great.
Metal light now. I hope
diet metal. No, I love them. I'm very excited. And then
Shanna, what happened? You're starting to scare me.
Welcome to the dark side.
Yeah, you could blame Hall for that one. Although I am going to see Depeche Mode.
Oh, there you go.
Dark too. They're dark.
And Muse in April, so it's still, I'm still on my stuff. So
I saw my friends Bob and Katie. I stayed with them over the weekend.
Oh, Bob and Katie.
And that's their favorite band. I mean, Depeche Mode. They're British, but we mentioned Bob the Bloody Bastard, and he heard it on one of the podcasts. I think it was one of the first ones you guys were on. All three of us were on, and somebody said I mentioned Bob Morris. And it was funny because I had to send his number to somebody today. And in my phone to share the contact, it goes Bob the Bloody Bastard. We can say that because he's British.
Can we? Can we say that, Dad? I'm not sure.
Term of endearment. We might have to, exit out like Major League Baseball. Now everybody's wired. and every other second word is the F-bomb. So they're trying to do an interview and the fans are yelling obscenities and the players anyway.
Oh man, beep,
Okay.
beep, beep. I
Yeah,
need a
beep,
little
beep,
beep
beep.
soundboard where I can beep us out because let's be
Okay.
real, I swear a lot too. But well, hello, Bob and Katie. That's so awesome that you got to see them and that they listen. That's very nice. All right, so let's jump in. I know that this episode has to be a little bit shorter. So let's just jump in. So for Halloween themed, for our Halloween episode, we are going to do our heroes and villains spinny wheel. So we so appreciate Andy adding in the spinny wheel. But so we're gonna spin
Shanna
it.
does that. Shannah's gonna
Shanna's doing it. Shanna,
she's more goth today.
you are, Shan. You're more goth than me today. All right, let's do
I spun it.
Oh, you did. You
I
spun
did.
the wheel. It's
Yeah.
a spinning. It's a spinning. Where's it landing? It looks like, I don't know. It's like not really clear. Like it's kind of in the middle between heroes and villains. Uh-oh. What are we gonna do about that, Dad? What do you have for that?
I had a couple, but not either were going to be a hero or a villain. And when we say that, a hero is, somebody I've worked with that most of our heroes, and sometimes there's villains, and sometimes the villains turn into heroes. So, I have a good one. Okay, I have a good one. So, you guys probably know Billy Idol, right? I mean, who he is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know him either, but when I was with Washburn Guitars, we talked about that when Shannon, both of you knew about Washburn and, saw the artist I work with. But we had Nuno Betancourt, and he was the biggest name, right? And Michelangelo, Michael Badio, but Michelangelo later played the double neck. But we really loved the Shredders. But I thought, God, we need somebody really with more hits, more like Extreme. We had some great guitar players. Anyway, and so this was Washburn. And we thought, well, what about Steve Stevens? I mean, he is really an amazing guitar player and one hit record after another, Rebel Yell and all that. They were a hip band and pro band. I've always understood that they were like among the most professional. I thought, well, that'd be great. We'll give him an endorsement. And so people that don't know who he is, he always had kind of like white face and came out of that New York hard rock scene. Like it wasn't like some of those bands, but they had that look, with the black hair teased up, almost like a Motley Crue kind of look, but he always wore like the white face. So a good friend of mine, Phil Bonanno, who produced Gambler, did Eye of the Tiger, Styx Records, worked on all the Chicago bands. Rest in peace. Sadly, he was our first producer.
Yeah.
He had a studio up at the Playboy Club called Royal Recorders. And he would give me a heads up when
the Playboy Club, like the original Playboy Club
original
in Chicago?
Playboy Club, and they took over part of it. I don't even know if it was a Playboy Club. It was in Lake Geneva, where your Uncle Bruce still lives.
Oh, okay.
And Bruce worked on the studio, the genius that he is. And Phil called me and said, anytime you'd like to know, now we're opening up, we have artists coming in. And if there's any artists that you would like to meet or work with or have an invitation, Steve Stevens was like the first one. So with Billy Idol. And it was either Billy Idol or maybe who's the singer from, I forget this, Motley Crue.
Vince Neil.
Yes, right. I think he might have been playing with him at the time. I'm not sure. But anyway, they were in the studio. So I hustle up there from Chicago, Lake Geneva, and I come in, and Steve knew I was coming. Phil told him. Phil was engineering the session. And I come in, and he looked just like he did, in the pictures, the big hair and everything. And he was dressed really cool. Like, like Keith Richards would always dress like that, even if he's wherever he is. If he goes to the store, Keith would be, like this, and the scarves and stuff. And that was the same thing with Steve, right? I sit down, I'm talking to him, and he's he's not a villain, but he's really standoffish. He really wasn't interested. And we had this long conversation and wasn't going anywhere. And I was really embarrassed. I just feel that, it was a corporate thing. He didn't want to get involved in that. And on and on. And while I'm talking to him, I look down, he had snakeskin pants on. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. His pants, he's in the studio, I kept looking. They were his boots, were his pants. He actually had Dr. Denton, like snakeskin boots that were pants,
Oh, that's different.
Like Dr. Denton, except they didn't have
I think I've ever seen that before, actually.
I know, and I'm looking at him. He says, "What are you looking at?" And I go, "I'm just amazed that you could actually." I mean, I was so off on the wrong track. So maybe I was a villain on that one. And we're discussing. We just can't get anywhere on this. And some subject comes up. He goes, "Well," he goes, "You know what I was thinking of though? If a company could do something really cool, like with Frankenstein or a monster, all the old monsters." And I said, and I'm older than him, but we all grew up with the same thing. My cousin Ken, my late cousin Ken, and I used to collect famous monsters. And the magazine was called Famous Monsters of Filmdom, like filmdom, like film. And it had all the monsters in it, old and
Still
new.
have any of those, Dad?
I don't have any more. Well, I did find some, and that's the epilogue to the story. Good
Oh,
point.
okay. Oh, sorry. All right.
No, it didn't ruin it. It's something that happened afterwards. So Steve we're talking about the monsters. I said, well, we could do something like that. We do the art guitars and everything like this. And he starts getting some ideas. And I said, so I mentioned a few things like posters and things like that. And he goes, hey, you're like really into this, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And I go, did you ever read Famous Monsters? And he goes, I have every one. I own every famous. All of a sudden, out of left field, right? The monster thing, all of a sudden we're chatting away, and it's all about monsters. And
Oh,
some of the songs that he wrote, like Eyes Without a Face, that's a famous, scary, not science fiction, that's monster, Eyes Without a Face. And I could tell then his look, you know what I mean? It was kind of gothic, but the New York look, and it was magical. And he said, I'll tell you what, he said, if you can get a meeting with the guy that started Famous Monsters. Maybe he thought I would never get that, right? He goes, if you can get a meeting with him, he lives in California. I'm in Chicago, but Steve's out there. He lives in California. He said, then we'll do the deal. Talk about
oh,
right? Turns out Steve had a contact number from somebody in the book. Maybe it was a magazine. I call it, and Forrest Ackerman, one of the creators of the magazine, answers the phone. And I go, Mr. Ackerman, oh, have it. Just call me Forey. That's what my friends call me. And I don't even know this. Forey, probably in his 80s by that point. And I go, Forey, Mr. Forey, I have this young man, and he's the guitar player for Billy Idol, and he just idolizes the magazine as I do. We're not hyping you. It's really important, and we're working on an ad campaign potentially. We don't have it yet, but part of it is that it would be an honor if he could meet you, if I could bring him. And I'm just asking you to the studio, or I don't even know where he was at that time, right? And he goes, absolutely, bring the young fella out there. And he says, come to my house in California. So I'm like, okay. So I call Steve, and I'm like, Steve, you're not going to believe this. When are you going to be in LA? He goes, I'll be there next week. I go, we're going to see Forey, but we're going to his house. He freaked out. He couldn't believe it.
I remember this now.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah. And
he's coming back. Yeah.
And he said, can I bring my girlfriend, Marlena, is her name? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so I gave him we picked up, he had a limousine, actually. He picked me up at the hotel, but we go up there, and as we go up, it's in the Hollywood Hills, and we go up to the doorbell, and on there it says Karloffornia instead of like California. It's Karloff, Boris Karloff, Karloffornia, which is Frankenstein. Which of course Steve right away goes, oh my God, this is an omen. He's got his address as Karloffornia. We look up, and there's this house, and I said, God, I think I've seen that house in a movie. And Steve said, yeah. And all of a sudden we ring the doorbell, and this voice comes up, and it goes, who dare disturb the slumber of the Ackermonster? Prepare to die, or something like that. And we're laughing.
This is so cool. I want to be
there. I know. And we open the door, and there he is. And he's the most wonderful gentleman. We're in awe. We can't say anything. The first woman, he had a guest book we signed. The first name in the guest book, like Madonna was there, and Boris Karloff and all these people, was Marlena Dietrich. Marlena was his friend. Jeez. And Steve's girlfriend was Marlena. It was so magical. And he was enamored with her. And she had white face and dark hair, but very, very beautiful. Like you, Shanna. I mean, kind of that look, dark, dark hair and her complexion was perfect and everything. And so he was just really enamored with her. He took us through his house, and I won't go through all the details, but like the first thing, there's a letter from Steven Spielberg when Steven Spielberg was like 16 going, I love famous monsters. And if someday I could ever meet you, you're an inspiration for my
That
film.
is so cool.
I knew we couldn't believe it. And he actually had a graveyard in his basement that took us down there. But all the walls.
Well, so do I. See, it's here.
And anyway, the whole house was collectibles, monster stuff. There was I love Forbidden Planet. Anybody who's out there that's fans, he had one of the last of there was in Forbidden Planet, he had some of the props that were toys. And in War of the Worlds, the first one made in the 50s, when they were really putting big budget in these movies, he had one of the little Martian spaceships that was on a board, like a war board, when they were moving stuff where the Martians
were. That's so cool.
He had the last one. They gave it to him as a gift. So he had collected stuff, just amazing amount of stuff. So we go to his bedroom, and he's got a picture of Boris Karloff, full makeup, with a cigarette and a cup of coffee, waiting for the scene in the original Frankenstein. So it was all about, really, Frankenstein was the main one, and Dracula. And so Forrest is sitting there. He's elderly, so he's sitting down in each room, but telling us the stories, going through everything. Anyway, he looks at Marlene and he said, you're beautiful and you remind me of Marlene Dietrich. And, it was kind of my love of my life. And he said, I want to show you something, if you don't mind. And we said, fine. He goes in the next room. All of a sudden he comes out and he's got this cape, and he's got his face like this behind the cape, and he's got his hand like this with this big ring, like a skull ring, something like that, coming out. And he goes, do not be afraid. I will not hurt you. And he comes at Marlene, and she's like, oh my God.
Oh, no.
And he goes, I'm sorry. I just want to joke. This is the original cape from Dracula.
From Dracula.
And this is Bela Lugosi's ring. The ring from the movie when it comes out.
Cool.
And your grandfather used to do that scene. He'd always laugh. He goes, do not be afraid. Come and sit on my knife. It's like, anyway, the deal's done. I mean, he gave us signed.
Yeah, Dad, I say you delivered.
That's where the villain came in, because I was a villain because I couldn't get this deal for Washburn. And then, so what happened with the shoot was Steve, then he took me to dinner. It was like the greatest night when Marlena was just so lovely. And he sends me I get back to Chicago, and in my office is this book, and it's from Europe, and it's all these famous posters, and it's the Frankenstein poster monster, but it was not released in the United States, the poster, because it was too scary. They thought it would scare people. This is one of the first monster movies. I mean, Nosferatu, I think, was the first, but anyway, in the 30s, and he wanted that on a guitar. So Rich Siegel, who you all know, my good buddy Rich, who followed me to Fender, and I'm going to actually see him next month, a great friend. He designed the guitar, and it glowed in the dark. It was a glow-in-the-dark Frankenstein guitar.
I remember that guitar.
Remember that? And they're going for like $10,000 now. I saw them online. I wish I had one.
Yes, Dad.
And we got Niels Lozauer to photograph it. Very famous photographer. If you guys remember the movie Rockstar, he's the photographer that takes Marky Mark's pictures, Mark Wahlberg's pictures and stuff. He's a very famous photographer we used to use. And he went up on a ladder and used a fisheye lens. So Steve's head and the monster is like this. I call Forrest, tell him what it's going to be. He let us use the masthead from Famous Monsters. And Rich did it, Famous Monsters of Guitardom.
I remember that.
Remember that? Yeah. Not only did that, if everyone knows who the NAMM show is, maybe not everyone listening, it's a big industry show. Rich Siegel built a Frankenstein castle at the NAMM show. It was the biggest show we ever had. And Steve came and met everybody in the castle. So I think that's a pretty good Halloween story.
Yeah. A couple things, just because I know we went over it before, but the NAMM show is the National Association of Music Merchants. It's the largest kind of instrument dealer and music what's it called, convention. So that happens in LA, and then I think they also do a summer one in Nashville or something, right? Yes. So I know we talked about that before, so that is so cool. Do you have pictures of the castle?
Yes, I don't have pictures of the castle. I'll check with Rich, but I do have the picture of the ad somewhere because it was
and the guitar.
special. and with the guitar, and it became so collectible. And of course, Forrest was so, so genuine. We wrote him. I actually wrote him a letter thanking him, and
Well,
he passed away.
Oh, he did. No, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
Well, when here's the epilogue to the story. So when I was in Chicago last time when we did the one podcast, Gambler had played the second show, and my brother Ed, who I stayed with after the show because it was in St. Charles where he lives. Ed goes, you got to go to my friend's collector's shop. He loves Gambler. I mean, he idolizes your band. He remembers you and stuff. I'm like, okay, well, he must be from a different era, right? That he, I mean, not that he wouldn't, but he was just a huge fan, and that was his favorite band. He had our records and posters. So we go to the store. It was the coolest store, right? In there is Famous Monsters stuff.
Oh, cool.
But Steve had the magazine. I found a Famous Monsters record. And because I was traveling, I was going to be flying 2 more places. I didn't want to buy it. If he still has it, I'll get it. But I took a picture of it with the owner of the store, and I sent it to Steve that day, Sunday.
Oh.
He responded. He goes, that's still one of the favorite days of my life.
Oh, how could it not be? That sounds
cool.
amazing.
How cool
is
that?
So is this then, because I'm pretty sure I remember some of this, a lot of this. But you brought something home for me from that trip, right? Do you remember you brought, and I'm pretty sure it must have been from the same thing. I know it was. So you brought me a picture of, I think it was Frankenstein, actually. I think it was like Boris Karloff is Frankenstein. But on it, it said, to Holly, my little vampire girl.
That's it.
From Forrest Ackerman. You got it signed for me, and he brought me home a picture because you told him, what was I, like 7, 8? And I'm so weird. I was like so into vampires and like obsessed when I was a kid. And not much has changed. No, but, and I remember having that forever, and it was up in like our TV room or that other room that we had. I have no idea where that is.
Oh,
like when we moved, when I moved and moved to California, and mom then sold the house and stuff, and you guys moved, Shan, with mom. I have no idea where that is. And it's so funny that you bring this story up, because I was just thinking about that the other day. I was like, I know I had something cool signed by something cool, and I always remember it said
random
little vampire girl. And
my, my little vampire. Hey folks, does that not say it all when you're listening to this? My little vampire at 7 years old.
Oh, I was
Freya, I don't know. Freya's gonna fall right into those.
Maybe
You have to protect Freya from some of this. You have to.
No,
there's no.
You like scary stuff too. You like vampires?
Me? Oh yeah, we went to see the Dracula ballet a couple weeks ago. So
yeah, Shanna took me to the ballet to go see Dracula the ballet. It was done really well. It was really it was beautiful. Shanna and I danced for many years, Shanna more than me. And so dancing always has a big place in our heart. So it was beautiful and really nice, though Shanna did say at one point she heard a loud yawn like to me. She was like, really we're yawning during this. That was
great.
But yeah,
Holly, I'm so glad we told that story. That just worked out, but I totally forgot about that. Ed still has the collector's edition of Famous Monsters, signed by Forrest Ackerman. I got that for Ed.
Okay.
I have black and white photos. I'll never find them. They're put away. I did save everything. I have it in storage, but I do have I think I have the picture of the Frankenstein, and I have some pictures with Forrest, but they're black and white. I think I just had a little, those portable cameras. Totally prepared. Totally. I didn't even know we were going to get in Karloffornia. We asked him what that house was as we're leaving. And I said, by the way, Forey, what is that house? Looks familiar. He goes, that from the original Vincent Price House
on Haunted Hill. I remember
right there.
I remember that because I love that movie.
And that was Kenny and I watched that. We were kids. I was probably 7 or 8 when, maybe a little older when it came out. And I remember I was staying with Kenny in Elmwood Park at the time. And we watched that, and I was so scared I couldn't go to bed at night. I was about 7 years old. That was a scary movie to me. It's pretty good. Vincent Price, he was the king of that stuff.
Yeah. Amazing.
Anyway. So good. I have it on DVD. That's like still one of my favorite all-time classic movies. And I do remember you telling me, you knew I was into it and I liked the movie, and you told me, we were at the house on Haunted Hill too. And I was like, oh, Dad, of all the times to not take me on a business trip with you.
Yeah, but you were really, well, I could have if I was actually really nervous because the only time Steve and I talked about it, he got so excited. I'm like, you know, you never know in business or even in friendship, I would say in anything that I do, but that's the Zelig in me. I mean, I've been blessed. Everything seems to work out, and not because of me. It's just, I mean, who knew Forey was going to be the greatest guy? Didn't charge us anything. I mean, some people would go, oh, you know, you have to, you know, I did once for Fender, I got Alex Perez, Alex, who was my assistant, he's still there. Once again, such a connected, great guy.
Alex.
You know, he'd bring Alanis Morissette in, and no one knew who she was. You know, Alex knew like the next thing. In fact, we went to a music festival together the first week I started Fender, and I had my usual black on, but the Chicago black. And after that, on Monday, we went back to work. He goes, hey, I just have to say something. Nobody wears black cowboy boots out here. Because those are the only boots that I thought were like Beatle boots. You know, I thought, oh, I got to be cool. I'm going to this festival. And he goes, not cool. Black suede cowboy boots doesn't cut it.
Maybe Alex wasn't cool. Yeah, that was supposed to say the same thing. Maybe Alex doesn't know it's cool. Was he wearing Vans? I'm sure.
Oh yeah. He was. It might have been. You know what it was? It was Warped Tour. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. Vans, probably. Nothing wrong with them, but I mean, I think suede cowboy boots or Beatle boots are much cooler, Dad.
I know. I have those too, but John Page, now I do. John Page still calls me Delwood J Blues because I came from Chicago and I'm wearing all black and a black car, and he just goes, man, you are like the Blues Brothers, you know. Delwood J Blues, he calls me. Instead of Elwood, of course. Pretty good.
Yeah, I am.
I mean, he'll send
me. No. I was just going to say, shout out to John Page. I know we've talked about him before. We love you, John. Amazing guitar builder who, and the reason why I want to plug him is he is still making his own guitars now to this day. And that if you know, who's ever listening, you guys got to go check him out. John Page Guitars. The last guitar he made was the most beautiful guitar I've ever seen. I think he calls it the Pantages or Pantages.
Oh yeah. I saw that.
Is that correct? So beautiful. So just quick shout out to John Page. We love you, and you're insanely talented.
Yep.
He always remembers you painting the music education, the bank building. I've mentioned that before. And here's Holly, you're 11 years old, and we're out there. And I think Grandma came and we're painting the building because we got it from the city for free. And John wanted to start a music program, which became very successful. But anyway, I'm glad we picked that story because there's a lot of good in that. And I totally forgot about my little vampire part of it there. But
yeah, it was perfect for our spooky story, our spooky Halloween episode.
What about Steve Stevens and Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Dad? Did they have a connection?
Yeah, well, the Kenny story, that's a good, thank you, Shanna. There is a connection there, weird as it sounds. So Steve ended up, we still talked. As I said, this was only a couple months ago. I sent him the pictures of the Famous Monsters vinyl record, which I got to contact my friend. I'll put a picture. I have a photo of us together with the owner of the store, Scott, and we're holding it up, the one I sent to Steve. So it'd be kind of cool. And we'll give a little plug to the store because it's an unbelievable collectible shop. And but Phil called me and we were trying to get acoustic guitars because the electrics were doing well for Washburn. And we'll tell another story about Dimebag Darrell, one of my favorites of all time, but too long for this episode. But we'll talk about Dime and taking that from Dean to Washburn and that. But we had those guys and we were kind of forgetting the acoustic side. So we started wanting to get back to acoustic, you know, promoting the acoustics, which Washburn was more known for until we got all these great players. And it was my job to do it. So Greg Allman was going to be there. And we thought, wow, the Allman Brothers are going to tour. Greg Allman's like the coolest guy in the world. If you've ever seen the movie Rush, where he comes in the room, it's one of the great scenes of all. He plays a drug dealer, but he's the fringe jacket. He's got, you know, he married Cher for what that's worth at the time, you know, so did Richie Tambor or dated her, you know, all the rock stars.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Sure. Yeah, Richie's girlfriends and wife were, Heather Locklear, Cher. I mean, I can go down the list with Richie, and totally humble guy, but that was Richie, and Orianthi, all the most talented, beautiful women. But Greg Allman, they were married I think they did have a child. But I went to see the Allman Brothers, and Phil just said, come on and sit in the session. And Phil was really good because he was working with the bands, and he'd just say, you just sit here with the band, you're fine, you're my guest. And then, I'll let him know that you're coming and you want to talk. So the only one that wasn't there was Greg. And so we're waiting, and they're waiting for him. They're just playing, and it sounded awful. And I remember, another story for later on with the Rolling Stones and how they're screwing around in the studio, and all of a sudden Charlie Watts counts a song off and it's the Stones, Well, with the Allman Brothers, they had 2 drummers and it was still all over the place. Not bad, but not together. It didn't sound like the Allman Brothers. God, these guys are getting old, and maybe they're just rusty. I don't know. Greg walks in, and it's the scene from Rush. It is like the coolest guy walks in the room, almost like in an old Western where the doors swing open and the piano player stops, and everybody turns around.
Record scratch.
Yeah. And he comes loping over, and he's pulling his beard, with the little white fringe. And he sits down, and they go, Greg, cool, And I said, oh, Greg, I'm here from Washington. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Well, we're going to run down a song, And they start, people, can you hear it? It's really cool. Love is Everywhere. It's a really big jam song, like most of their stuff. They start off, and he goes, hey, hold on. He's got the big Hammond organ, and he goes, wait a minute, what's that part? He goes, play that tape. And they play the part, and he's got a solo in it, and he plays, all right, I got it. Okay, count it off. The Hammond organ was the biggest sounding thing. I'm sitting right next to him with these big Leslies. Kicks it off. It's the Allman Brothers, and it's spectacular. And my hair is like pinned back because the Leslie is spinning, and it's a Leslie is from 1939. It's a spinning speakers that go like this. So my hair is flying. He's playing. He's singing "Love Is Everywhere," and he's playing it. I was absolutely blown away. Okay, they get done, and the drummer, somebody trucks. He goes, I'll take a break. I'll be right back. And Greg goes, yeah. So what are you here for? And I go, well, we're going to talk to you about doing a guitar kind of, you played on Sweet Melissa, and we have a Washburn, and we would like to do a signature model acoustic, and we'll call it Melissa, Sweet Melissa. And he goes, great, let's do it. It wasn't even like, normally you go to management for those things, but to an artist, it's really personal, and in that case, I didn't know the manager, and Greg, the leader of the band. It's the Allman Brothers band, sadly Dwayne was long gone. So we do it, and we put Sweet Melissa into the neck on the guitar.
Oh, nice.
Right. So, and then I left Washburn. I went to Fender, but that was a project that I did, and I was very, very proud of. And he was such a great guy to work with. No negotiations, it's usually non-favored nations, so everybody kind of gets the same thing. So we did the deal. We do the acoustics, total success. My second year at Fender, I had met Kenny Winshepard and brought him. We had talked about Kenny before.
Shanna's favorite, which we talked about.
He invites me to the wedding, and I'm dating Bettina at the time, before we got married. We had done the Blues Fest, which Kenny later played. We go to Shreveport, which is like the coolest, James Burton lived there. I mean, Johnny Rivers, all these people out of Shreveport, all these great guitar players. And we go to the wedding, and his first wedding, and his future wife is Melissa. And they had this great New Orleans band, but they're in church, and Noah, the singer, of course, Noah, the singer, Kenny comes out with the acoustic, the model acoustic. I don't know if it said Sweet. I'm pretty sure it said Sweet Melissa. I mean, my memory is a little fading on that because I was in the church, and they do the Allman Brothers song for the wedding. That's his gift to her, Sweet Melissa. So that's got to belong to that story. The connection between Kenny Winshepard and the Allman Brothers.
Was that his first or second, or his current wife? Because he was married prior.
No, he married. Well, we went to see him at the House of Blues, and we were sitting with Mel Gibson. We didn't talk to him, but his whole family was there. He married Mel Gibson's wife. That's who.
Daughter.
He married
daughter.
Oh,
right. Married his daughter.
Oh man,
that's why they were there.
That would have been
Mel
awkward.
Is your father?
Sorry.
Can we imagine that for a second? Well, great stories, Dad.
And then at that meeting, I also met Butch Trucks, which was a drummer. His nephew. He said, "Could you work with my nephew since you're working with Greg?" That's Derek Trucks. And if anyone knows who Derek Trucks is, a superstar now, and I gave him an endorsement, he's probably 13. But just because Butch Trucks said my nephew plays guitar, and he married Susan Tedeschi.
Oh yeah, Susan Tedeschi.
And now today, who also played Catalina, of course. You know, I mean, I went to the well many times for Catalina for the Blues Fest, but I thought I'd tell that story. So I got 2 for 1 out of that.
You got it in.
There. Actually 3 with Steve Stevens. So Phil, if you're up there listening, I love you, man. And I love you for more than just doing that, but those were great times.
Oh, I mean, this is why we're doing this podcast, right? Because you got all the stories on top of stories and more stories. So yeah, these were great today, Dad. Again, this was kind of our Halloween episode. So we just ran with that just a little bit. We're going to cut it off now. We're going to keep this one a little shorter today, but again, we so appreciate everyone for listening, and please do the things, the social media things, like, share, comment, send us an email. You can reach us at rocknrollzelig@gmail.com. Shoot us an email with any questions. If you have questions for Del and you want to know a little bit more about something, or maybe you want to see some pictures, I'm sure, Dad, you're going to try to go through and find some pictures we can maybe
yes,
put here in the video. But yeah, if anyone ever has any questions, please feel free to reach out, email, or message us. And we hope everyone has a wonderful and safe Halloween. Again, it's our favorite time of year. So we're, I'm excited to go trick-or-treating with my daughter on Monday. That'll be fun. All right. So thank you so much, everyone. We, again, just appreciate all the support, and we will see you guys all again really soon. Shanna, thank you so much for being on and doing this with us. Dad, thank you for all the great stories again today. Love you guys, and thanks again, everyone. Talk soon. Bye.
Happy Halloween.